The observation deck of the UFS Valiant was quiet at this hour. Most cadets were either in their quarters sleeping or in the recreation areas playing games and socializing. Emma Carter preferred it this way. She sat cross-legged on the metal floor, her back against the massive viewing window that showed the endless stars outside. Her datapad glowed softly in the dim light as she studied navigation charts. Emma was 19 years old and in her second year at the academy. She had brown hair tied back in a simple ponytail and wore the standard gray cadet uniform. At 5 feet 4 inches tall, she looked small even by human standards. This was especially true aboard the Valiant, where most of the other species were much larger than humans. The ship was huge, almost like a floating city. It housed 3,000 cadets from 12 different alien species, all training to serve in the Galactic Defense Alliance. Humans were the newest members of the Alliance, having joined only 3 years ago. Most of the other species had been members for decades or even centuries. Emma was one of only 12 humans on the entire ship. This made her stand out, though she tried her best to blend in. Some aliens were curious about humans and asked her questions. Others seemed to think humans were weak and didn't belong in the Alliance. A few were openly hostile. The Vorthak were among the most hostile. They were a reptilian species from a hot, dry world where only the strongest survived. They stood 8 feet tall on average, with thick scales that acted like natural armor. Their hands ended in sharp claws and their mouths were full of pointed teeth. They were proud warriors who believed that strength was the most important quality any being could have. There were 7 Vorthak cadets on the Valiant. They always traveled together like a pack, and they made no secret of their feelings about humans. They thought humans were soft, weak creatures who had somehow talked their way into the Alliance instead of earning their place through combat. Emma tried to ignore their comments when she passed them in the corridors. She focused on her studies and training, hoping to prove that humans belonged here through hard work and dedication. She was actually doing quite well in her classes, especially in tactical studies and alien culture courses. Tonight she was studying star charts for an upcoming navigation exam. The observation deck was the perfect place for this because she could see the actual stars while she studied their positions on her datapad. The soft hum of the ship's engines was relaxing, and the gentle vibration through the floor helped her concentrate. She had been studying for about an hour when she heard heavy footsteps approaching. The sound was distinctive, the click of claws on metal flooring. Emma looked up from her datapad and saw all 7 Vorthak cadets walking toward her. Their leader was a particularly large specimen named Krex who stood almost 9 feet tall. Emma's heart began to beat faster, but she kept her expression calm. She had been expecting something like this for months. The Vorthak had been getting bolder with their insults and challenges lately. It seemed like tonight they had decided to move beyond words. The 7 aliens spread out in a half-circle around Emma, blocking her path to the exit. Their scales seemed to shimmer in the starlight from the viewing window. Krex stepped forward, his yellow eyes glowing in the dim light. "Human," he said in his harsh voice. The universal translator device he wore made his words understandable, but they still sounded rough and threatening. "You sit here alone like prey that has wandered from the herd." Emma slowly closed her datapad and set it aside. She remained sitting, but her muscles were no longer relaxed. "I'm just studying," she said quietly. "I'm not bothering anyone." Krex made a sound that might have been laughter. "Studying? Yes, this is what humans do instead of training for real combat. You read about war instead of learning to fight." The other 6 Vorthak moved closer, their claws scraping against the metal floor. Emma could smell their reptilian scent, musky and warm. Their breathing was slow and deep, like predators preparing to strike. "We have been watching you humans," another Vorthak said. "You are small and weak. You have no claws, no natural armor, no strength. How did your species earn a place in the Alliance?" Emma's hand moved slowly to her belt, where a small emergency beacon was clipped. She pressed it with her thumb, activating a silent alarm. Security would be alerted, but it would take them several minutes to reach this part of the ship. "Politics," Krex answered his companion's question. The humans used words and promises instead of proving themselves in battle. "But words cannot protect you here, little human." Emma finally stood up, moving slowly and carefully. Even standing, the top of her head barely reached Krex's chest. The size difference was intimidating, but Emma's expression remained calm. "There are cameras in this room," she said softly. "Security will see whatever happens here." "Yes," Krex agreed. They will see how quickly a human falls when faced with real warriors. Perhaps this will teach the Alliance about the weakness they have allowed into their ranks. The other Vorthak spread out further, making sure Emma could not run past them. They were moving with the coordination of experienced hunters. This was not a random act of violence. They had planned this encounter. Emma took a deep breath and looked around at the 7 aliens surrounding her. She was trapped, outnumbered, and facing opponents who were each twice her size and naturally armed with claws and teeth. Any reasonable person would be terrified. Instead, Emma felt a familiar calm settling over her mind. It was the same feeling she had experienced during her training back on Earth. In places that were highly classified and never appeared on any official records, her instructors had prepared her for exactly this type of situation. "Are you sure you want to do this?" she asked quietly. Krex's eyes narrowed. "You dare to threaten us, human?" "I'm not threatening anyone," Emma replied. "I'm just asking if you're sure. Once this starts, I can't stop it." The Vorthak leader took another step forward, bringing his massive form closer to Emma. His claws extended slightly, catching the starlight. "We are warriors, human. We have trained since we were children. You are nothing but a soft, weak creature playing at being a soldier." Emma nodded slowly. "I understand. But I have to warn you officially, according to Alliance regulations, I am classified as a restricted combatant under Regulation 847C. You should stand down now." The 7 Vorthak looked at each other and made sounds that the translator converted into laughter. None of them had ever heard of Regulation 847C. As far as they knew, humans had no special combat classifications. "Your warning is noted and ignored, human," Krex said. "Now you will learn what happens to prey that wanders too far from safety." Emma closed her eyes for a moment and took one more deep breath. When she opened them again, something had changed. The scared cadet was gone, replaced by something much more dangerous. "Okay," she said softly. "But remember, you chose this." Krex reached for Emma with his massive clawed hand, expecting her to flinch or try to run. Instead, she remained perfectly still until the last possible moment. When his hand was inches from her shoulder, Emma moved. She stepped sideways so smoothly that Krex's hand passed harmlessly through empty air. Before he could react, Emma's own hand shot forward like a striking snake. Her fingers hit a precise spot on his thick neck just below his jaw. Krex's eyes went wide with shock, then rolled back as he collapsed to the floor unconscious. The other 6 Vorthak stared in disbelief. Their leader, the strongest among them, had fallen in less than a second. The human hadn't used any weapon or special device. She had simply touched him, and he had dropped like a stone. "Impossible," one of them hissed. "Krex is the strongest warrior in our class. How did you—" Emma was already moving toward the second Vorthak. This one was quicker than his leader and managed to swipe at her with his claws. Emma ducked under the attack and grabbed his extended arm. Using his own momentum against him, she spun and threw him across the room. The alien crashed through the railing around the observation platform and landed hard on the metal floor below. The remaining 5 Vorthak finally understood that something was very wrong. The small human in front of them was not the helpless prey they had expected. She moved like liquid mercury, flowing around their attacks as if she could predict their movements before they made them. "Kill her," one of them shouted. "All together!" 3 of them rushed Emma at once, coming from different angles to prevent her from escaping. Emma didn't try to escape. Instead, she grabbed a piece of the broken railing that her second opponent had damaged when he crashed through it. The metal bar was about 3 feet long and jagged at one end. Emma swung the improvised weapon in a wide arc, catching the first attacker across the side of his head. The impact made a sound like a gong, and the Vorthak stumbled sideways, dazed. Before he could recover, Emma reversed her grip on the metal bar and drove the blunt end into his solar plexus. The alien doubled over, gasping for breath, then collapsed. The second attacker in the group tried to grab Emma from behind. She spun around and slammed the metal bar down across his collarbone. There was a sharp crack, and the Vorthak screamed in pain as his shoulder dropped at an unnatural angle. Emma followed up by sweeping his legs, sending him crashing to the floor. The third attacker hesitated, suddenly unsure about rushing toward this small human who had just disabled 2 of his companions in a matter of seconds. Emma didn't give him time to think. She threw the metal bar at him like a spear. It struck him in the chest, and the force of the impact knocked him backward against the viewing window. He slid down the transparent surface and lay still. 2 Vorthak remained. They backed away from Emma, finally understanding that they were in serious danger. The human stood in the center of the observation deck, surrounded by their fallen companions. Her breathing was steady and calm, as if she had just finished a light exercise routine instead of a life-or-death battle. "This is not possible," one of the remaining Vorthak whispered. "Humans are weak. Everyone knows this." Emma looked at him with something that might have been pity. "Everyone knows lots of things that aren't true," she said softly. The Vorthak who had spoken tried to run. He turned toward the exit, but Emma was faster. She picked up another piece of debris from the broken railing and threw it with perfect accuracy. The metal fragment struck the fleeing alien in the back of his head, and he crashed face first into the wall beside the door. He slumped to the floor and didn't move. The last Vorthak was frozen with terror. He had seen his 6 companions defeated in less than 30 seconds by a human who was barely half their size. His warrior training told him to fight, but every instinct screamed at him to surrender. Emma walked toward him slowly, her movements graceful and controlled. She didn't seem angry or excited. If anything, she looked slightly bored, as if this entire encounter had been a minor inconvenience. "Please," the Vorthak said, his voice shaking. "I surrender." "We were wrong. We should not have attacked you." Emma stopped directly in front of him. Even though she had to look up to meet his eyes, somehow he felt like she was looking down at him. "Yes, you should not have attacked me," she agreed. She reached out with one finger and gently touched the center of his chest, right over his heart. The Vorthak looked down and saw that her fingertip was positioned exactly where a killing blow would need to land to stop his heart instantly. "But I'm not going to hurt you," Emma continued. "You're going to sit down right here and wait for security to arrive. You're going to tell them exactly what happened, and you're going to make sure your friends get medical attention. Do you understand?" The Vorthak nodded frantically. "Yes, human. I understand. I will do exactly as you say." Emma stepped back and walked over to where she had been sitting originally. She picked up her datapad and settled back into her cross-legged position against the viewing window. "Good. And my name is Emma Carter, not human." The surviving Vorthak carefully moved to check on his unconscious companions. Most of them were still breathing, though some had injuries that would require medical treatment. He was amazed that the human had managed to disable them without killing anyone. The precision required for such restraint was almost as impressive as the speed of her attacks. As he waited for help to arrive, the Vorthak found himself studying Emma Carter. She had returned to reading her datapad as if nothing had happened. Her uniform wasn't even wrinkled, and there wasn't a single mark on her to show that she had just fought 7 opponents. The sound of running footsteps echoed through the corridors outside. Security was finally arriving, drawn by the emergency beacon Emma had activated before the fight began. The Vorthak realized that she had planned for this possibility from the very beginning. She had known exactly what was going to happen and had been prepared for it. "Emma Carter," he said quietly. She looked up from her datapad. "Yes? What are you?" Emma considered the question for a moment. "I'm a second-year cadet studying tactical operations and alien cultures," she said. "Same as you." The security team burst into the observation deck, weapons drawn and ready for trouble. They stopped short when they saw the scene in front of them. 6 Vorthak cadets were scattered around the room, unconscious or injured. The 7th sat quietly beside them, his hands raised in surrender. And in the middle of it all, a small human cadet sat peacefully reading her datapad. "What happened here?" the security chief demanded. Emma looked up calmly. "There was an incident involving multiple attackers," she said. "I defended myself according to Alliance regulations. The cameras recorded everything." The security chief looked around at the defeated Vorthak, then back at Emma. He had seen combat veterans who didn't look as composed after a fight as this young cadet did. "Are you injured, Cadet Carter?" "No, sir," Emma replied. "I'm fine. But these cadets will need medical attention." As the security team called for medics and began securing the scene, Emma returned to her studies. She had a navigation exam tomorrow, and she still had 3 more star charts to memorize. The fact that she had just single-handedly defeated 7 trained alien warriors was already fading into the background of her mind. After all, this was exactly the kind of situation she had been trained for. The medical bay of the UFS Valiant had never been so busy. 6 injured Vorthak cadets lay on treatment beds while alien doctors worked frantically to understand their injuries. Dr. Zenth, the ship's head medical officer, was a tall, thin being from a species that specialized in healing. He had treated combat injuries for 30 years, but what he was seeing now confused him. These are not normal battle wounds, Dr. Zenth told his assistant as they examined Krex, the Vorthak leader. Look at this. He pointed to the unconscious alien's neck. There is no external damage, no cuts or bruises, but somehow the nerve cluster here has been completely disrupted. The assistant, a young medic from the same species as Dr. Zenth, leaned closer to look. How is that possible? The Vorthak have very thick skin and protective scales. It should be impossible to hit such a precise target through their natural armor. That's what I don't understand, Dr. Zenth replied. Whoever did this knew exactly where to strike, and had the skill to hit a target smaller than a coin through protective scaling. This level of anatomical knowledge and precision is unusual. At the bed next to Krex, another doctor was examining the Vorthak with the dislocated shoulder. This injury is even stranger, she called over. The shoulder and hip joints have been separated, but there's no tearing of the surrounding tissue. It's as if someone took the joints apart and put them back together wrong, but did it so carefully that there's almost no additional damage. Dr. Zenth walked over to examine the patient. Show me, he said. The doctor manipulated the injured joints carefully. See how clean the separation is? This wasn't done with brute force. Someone who understood Vorthak anatomy perfectly did this with surgical precision. They could have easily killed him, but instead they just made him unable to fight. Across the room, a third doctor was treating the Vorthak who had been thrown across the room. This one has a concussion and several cracked ribs, but again, nothing life-threatening. Whoever fought these warriors was holding back significantly. Dr. Zenth felt a chill run through his body. Are you telling me that all of these injuries were deliberately non-lethal? That someone fought 7 Vorthak warriors and chose not to kill any of them? That's exactly what I'm telling you, the first doctor confirmed. And according to the security report, this was done by a single human cadet who weighs maybe half as much as the smallest Vorthak. Meanwhile, in the security office, Commander Lisa Brooks was reviewing the footage from the observation deck cameras. She was a tall woman with short blonde hair and the kind of scars that came from real combat experience. As the senior human instructor on the Valiant, she had been called in to review the incident involving Emma Carter. Captain Jake Morrison sat beside her, watching the video for the third time. He was a middle-aged human with gray hair and eyes that had seen too much warfare. As the ship's commanding officer, he was responsible for maintaining peace between the different species aboard the Valiant. Play it again, Commander Brooks said quietly. Captain Morrison started the video over. They watched Emma sitting peacefully with her data pad, then the arrival of the 7 Vorthak cadets. They saw the confrontation, Emma's warning about Regulation 847C, and then the fight itself. 7 seconds, Captain Morrison said as the video ended. From the first attack to the last Vorthak falling down. 7 seconds, Commander Brooks leaned back in her chair. Jake, I need to make a classified communication to Earth Command immediately. Why? What's so special about Regulation 847C? Brooks was already standing up and moving toward the secure communications panel. Because it's a regulation that's supposed to be so classified that ship commanders like you don't even know it exists. Captain Morrison felt his stomach drop. Lisa, what aren't you telling me about our human cadets? I can't tell you anything until I get authorization from Earth, Brooks replied. But Jake, I need you to seal Emma's records immediately. No one else can see them until we figure out how to handle this situation. As Brooks activated the secure communication system, Captain Morrison pulled up Emma Carter's file on his personal terminal. What he saw looked completely normal. Born in California, excellent grades in school, accepted to the academy on merit. No special training or background noted. But as he scrolled through the file, he noticed something odd. There were several sections that showed as classified above his clearance level. This was unusual for a cadet file. Most cadet information was routine and accessible to ship commanders. The secure communication connected, and Brooks began speaking in code words that Captain Morrison didn't recognize. Her conversation was brief, but he could see the tension in her shoulders as she spoke. When she finished the call, Brooks turned back to Morrison with a grim expression. We have a problem, she said. What kind of problem? The kind that could start a war if we handle it wrong, Brooks replied. Emma Carter isn't just any cadet, Jake. She's a graduate of the Terran Marshall Institute. Captain Morrison frowned. I've never heard of that place. That's because it doesn't officially exist, Brooks explained. TMI is Earth's most classified military program. They take children who show exceptional potential and train them from a young age to be perfect soldiers. The program is so secret that most Earth military commanders don't know about it. And Emma is one of these super soldiers, one of the best according to her real file, Brooks confirmed. She's trained in 847 different combat forms from across human history. She knows the anatomy and weak points of every known alien species. She can kill with her bare hands in dozens of different ways. Captain Morrison looked back at the video screen, which was frozen on an image of Emma calmly reading her datapad after defeating 7 alien warriors. If she's so dangerous, why is she here as a regular cadet? Cover, Brooks said simply. Earth Command embeds TMI graduates in regular military units to gather intelligence and provide hidden protection. Emma's cadet status is real, but her combat classification puts her on the same level as Alliance Special Forces. That regulation she mentioned? 847C requires TMI operatives to warn opponents before engaging in combat. It's designed to prevent diplomatic incidents exactly like this one. Captain Morrison rubbed his temples, feeling a headache building. So what happens now? Before Brooks could answer, Captain Morrison's communication panel chimed with an urgent message. He read it quickly, then looked up with concern. The Vorthak government is demanding a full investigation, he said. They're claiming their cadets were victims of an unprovoked assault by a human using illegal combat enhancement drugs. Brooks laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. Enhancement drugs? Jake, Emma Carter doesn't need drugs. She was designed to be a weapon from the time she was 5 years old. Can we prove that she was defending herself? The video clearly shows the Vorthak surrounding her and making threats, Brooks replied. But that might not be enough. The Vorthak culture values strength above everything else. Having 7 of their best warriors defeated by one small human female is going to be seen as deeply humiliating. Captain Morrison stood up and walked to the viewing port in his office. Outside, he could see other ships of the Alliance fleet moving through space in perfect formation. Each ship represented a different species, all working together for mutual defense and prosperity. How many other humans like Emma are serving in the Alliance? He asked. Brooks was quiet for a long moment. I don't have exact numbers, Jake, but if Earth Command is following their usual protocols, there are probably TMI graduates scattered throughout the entire fleet. And none of the alien species know about this? They're about to find out, Brooks replied grimly. Because this incident is going to force Earth Command to reveal capabilities they've been hiding for 3 years. Captain Morrison turned back to face Brooks. What's Earth been hiding, Lisa? The truth, she said. When humanity applied to join the Alliance, we let them think we were a developing species that needed protection. We showed them carefully edited demonstrations of our military capabilities. We made ourselves look weak and harmless, but we're not. Brooks pulled up a new file on her datapad and showed it to Morrison. The information made his eyes widen in shock. Jake, Emma Carter is considered an average graduate of the TMI program. She's not special or exceptional by their standards. She's just a normal product of humanity's most advanced military training. Captain Morrison stared at the file, trying to process what he was reading. How many TMI graduates does Earth have? That's classified even from me, Brooks replied. But Jake, if Emma is average and she just defeated 7 elite alien warriors in 7 seconds, what do you think humanity's actual military capabilities are? Before Captain Morrison could answer, another urgent message appeared on his communication panel. This one was from Alliance Command itself, demanding an immediate report on the incident involving human cadet Emma Carter. This is going to change everything, Captain Morrison said quietly. Brooks nodded. The Alliance thought they were accepting a species that needed protection. Instead, they may have invited the apex predators of the galaxy to join their ranks. News of the incident spread through the UFS Valiant, faster than a fire in an oxygen-rich atmosphere. By the next morning, every cadet on the ship had heard some version of the story. The details grew more incredible with each telling, but the basic facts remained the same. A single human cadet had defeated 7 Vorthak warriors in seconds. Emma Carter found herself at the center of attention she had never wanted. As she walked through the corridors to her morning classes, conversation stopped and aliens turned to stare at her. Some looked fearful, others curious, and a few seemed angry or resentful. In the mess hall, Emma sat alone at a table in the corner, trying to eat her breakfast in peace. She had chosen synthetic eggs and toast, simple human food that wouldn't attract attention. But even something as basic as eating had become complicated now that everyone was watching her. A group of Zenthari cadets sat at a nearby table, speaking in their musical language. Emma's universal translator picked up fragments of their conversation. Dangerous human, hidden weapons, cannot trust them. At another table, 3 Kalani cadets were having a heated discussion. The Kalani were a peaceful species that resembled large furry cats. They rarely raised their voices, but Emma could hear their distress. If the humans can do this, why did they not tell us? What else are they hiding? Emma pushed her food around on her plate, having lost her appetite. This was exactly what her instructors at the Terran Martial Institute had warned her about. TMI operatives were supposed to blend in, to be invisible until the moment action was required. She had failed in that mission spectacularly. Her datapad chimed with a message from Commander Brooks. Report to my office immediately after morning classes. Emma sighed and stood up, leaving most of her breakfast untouched. As she walked toward the exit, she heard a voice behind her. Emma Carter. She turned to see 3 senior cadets from the Haxari species approaching her. The Haxari were tall, blue-skinned beings with 4 arms and a reputation for being excellent strategists. Their leader was a cadet named Vexka, who was known throughout the ship for his tactical brilliance, yes? Emma replied cautiously. We have been discussing last night's events, Vexka said in his precise, measured voice. We have some questions. Emma glanced around the mess hall. Their conversation was attracting attention from other tables. What kind of questions? Military ones, Vexka replied. You defeated 7 Vorthak warriors using techniques none of us recognized. Where did you learn such combat methods? I trained on Earth before coming here, Emma answered carefully. All human military personnel receive basic combat training. One of the other Haxari, a female named Yelna, stepped forward. Basic training does not produce the skills we observed in the security footage. Your movements were those of a master warrior, not a student. Emma felt trapped. She couldn't reveal the truth about the TMI program. But her cover story was clearly not convincing anyone with real military experience. I've been training since I was young, she said, which was technically true. Earth takes military preparation seriously. How seriously? Vexka asked. The question sounded casual, but Emma could hear the sharp intelligence behind it. Before Emma could answer, a new voice interrupted their conversation. That's enough questions for now. Everyone turned to see Commander Brooks approaching their table. The human instructor looked stern and official in her Alliance uniform. The alien cadets immediately straightened to attention. Cadet Carter has classes to attend, Brooks continued. If you have concerns about the incident last night, you can file a formal report with the ship's administration. Vexka studied Brooks carefully. Commander, we mean no disrespect, but this incident has raised questions about human capabilities that affect the entire Alliance. Those questions will be answered through proper channels, Brooks replied firmly. Now please return to your meals. The Haxari cadets exchanged glances, then moved back to their table. Emma could see them continuing their discussion in quiet voices, but she couldn't make out their words. Come with me, Brooks told Emma. We need to talk. They walked through the corridors in silence until they reached Brooks' office. It was a small room with a desk, 2 chairs, and a secure communication terminal. The walls were decorated with commendation certificates and photos from Brooks's previous military assignments. Sit down, Brooks said, closing the door behind them. Emma took the chair across from Brooks's desk. Commander, I know I messed up. I should have found a way to avoid the confrontation. Actually, you handled the situation exactly as you were trained, Brooks replied. You gave the required warnings, you used minimum necessary force, and you prevented a serious diplomatic incident from becoming a deadly one. Then why do I feel like I've made everything worse? Brooks activated her secure communication terminal and pulled up a series of files. Because you have, but not in the way you think. Emma, your actions last night have forced Earth Command to accelerate a timeline that was supposed to take years to implement. Emma frowned. What timeline? The gradual revelation of human military capabilities to our alliance partners, Brooks explained. We've been slowly introducing evidence of our true strength, giving the other species time to adjust to the reality of what humanity brings to the alliance. And now? Now they're demanding answers immediately, Brooks said. She turned her terminal screen so Emma could see it. The display showed dozens of official communications from Alliance Command, various species governments, and military leaders throughout the fleet. Emma read some of the message headers: urgent investigation required, human combat capabilities, and request for full disclosure. Earth military programs and emergency session. Alliance Security Council. The Vorthak government is demanding that you be court-martialed for using banned combat techniques, Brooks continued. 3 other species have filed formal complaints claiming that Earth has violated the Alliance Charter by hiding our true military strength. Emma felt her stomach sink. What's going to happen to me? That depends on how Earth Command decides to handle this, Brooks replied. They have 3 options. First, they could claim you're an anomaly, a special case that doesn't represent typical human capabilities. This would protect the TMI program, but probably result in your expulsion from the Alliance. What's the second option? Full disclosure, Brooks said. Earth reveals the TMI program, acknowledges that we've been hiding our military capabilities, and deals with the diplomatic consequences. And the third option? Brooks was quiet for a moment. The third option is the one that scares me most. Earth Command could decide that the secret is too important to protect through normal diplomatic channels. Emma understood what Brooks was implying. You think they might use more TMI operatives to silence people who ask too many questions? I hope not, Brooks replied. But Emma, you need to understand something. The TMI program exists because humanity learned some hard lessons about survival in a hostile universe. Earth Command will do whatever it takes to protect our species, even if that means making difficult choices. Before Emma could respond, Brooks's communication terminal chimed with an urgent message. Brooks read it quickly, then looked up with a grave expression. Emma, I just received word from Earth Command. They've made their decision. Which option did they choose? None of them, Brooks replied. They're sending Admiral Patricia Wells to personally handle the situation. She'll arrive on the Valiant in 3 days. Emma's blood ran cold. Admiral Wells was a legend in the TMI program, one of the original instructors who had helped design the training protocols. She was also known for her absolute dedication to protecting Earth's interests. Regardless of the cost, Commander, Emma said quietly, I think I'm in serious trouble. We all are, Brooks replied. Because Admiral Wells doesn't come out of retirement unless Earth Command thinks the entire Alliance is at risk. Outside Brooks' office, the corridors of the UFS Valiant continued to buzz with rumors and speculation. Alien cadets gathered in small groups discussing the implications of what they had witnessed. Some were frightened, others were angry, and many were beginning to question everything they thought they knew about humanity. In the Vorthak section of the ship, the 7 defeated warriors were recovering from their injuries and their humiliation. Their failure had become a source of shame that would follow them for the rest of their careers. But more than that, it had shattered their fundamental beliefs about human weakness. And throughout the Alliance fleet, military commanders were requesting new intelligence assessments about Earth's true capabilities. The careful diplomatic balance that had existed for 3 years was beginning to crumble. Emma Carter had wanted nothing more than to blend in and complete her training quietly. Instead, her 7 seconds of combat had set in motion events that would reshape the entire galaxy's understanding of humanity's place in the cosmic order. Admiral Patricia Wells arrived on the UFS Valiant exactly as scheduled, 3 days after the incident. Her shuttle docked in the main bay with minimal fanfare, but word of her presence spread quickly through the ship. Wells was a small woman in her 60s with silver hair and the kind of steady gaze that came from making life and death decisions for 30 years. Captain Morrison met her at the shuttle bay, along with Commander Brooks and the ship's senior staff. Wells wore the dark blue uniform of Earth Command, with decorations that few people in the Alliance had ever seen before. Admiral Wells, Captain Morrison said, saluting. Welcome aboard the Valiant, Captain Morrison, Wells replied, returning the salute. I wish I was here under better circumstances. As they walked toward the conference room, Wells spoke quietly to Brooks. How bad is the situation? Getting worse by the hour, Brooks replied. We've had formal complaints from 6 different species. The Vorthak are demanding Emma's expulsion from the Alliance. The Haxari are asking for a complete review of human military capabilities. And the Zenthari have suggested that Earth has violated the Alliance Charter by concealing the true nature of our species. Wells nodded grimly. And what about Cadet Carter? Confined to quarters for her own protection, Brooks said. Some of the alien cadets are angry and we've had to break up 3 separate confrontations. The incident has polarized the entire ship. They entered the main conference room, where a dozen screens showed feeds from Alliance Command, various species governments, and other ships in the fleet. The scale of the diplomatic crisis was becoming clear. Ladies and gentlemen, Wells began, addressing the assembled officers. I'm here to resolve this situation, but first I need everyone to understand what we're really dealing with. She activated a secure projector that displayed classified information about the TMI program. The assembled officers, most of whom were seeing this data for the first time, listened in stunned silence. The Terran Marshall Institute has been operational for 23 years, Wells explained. We currently have 1,147 active graduates serving throughout Earth's military forces. Of these, 312 are embedded in Alliance units as deep cover operatives, Captain Morrison interrupted. Admiral, are you saying there are other TMI graduates serving in the Alliance fleet? Captain, there are TMI operatives on 40% of Alliance vessels, Wells replied. They serve as regular crew members, officers, and in some cases, senior commanders. None of the alien species have been aware of this. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Commander Brooks was the first to speak. Admiral, if this information becomes public, it could destroy the Alliance. That's why we're going to control how it becomes public, Wells replied. She turned to address the entire room. Earth Command has decided on a strategy of limited disclosure. We're going to reveal the existence of enhanced human combat capabilities without disclosing the full extent of the TMI program. How? Captain Morrison asked. By using Cadet Carter as an example, Wells explained. We're going to tell the Alliance that Emma represents a new generation of human soldiers, trained with advanced techniques that we've recently developed. This will allow us to acknowledge our capabilities while maintaining operational security for our embedded operatives. Before anyone could respond, the conference room's communication system activated. The face of Alliance Supreme Commander Thekvar appeared on the main screen. The elderly Xanthari looked tired and concerned. Admiral Wells, he said formally, the Alliance Council has voted to convene an emergency tribunal to investigate the incident aboard the Valiant. You and Cadet Carter are required to present testimony within 48 hours. Understood, Supreme Commander, Wells replied. We'll be ready. After the communication ended, Wells turned to face the room again. This is our chance to control the narrative, but we need to be careful. The tribunal will include representatives from all 12 Alliance species, and they'll be asking very specific questions about human capabilities. What if they don't believe our story? Brooks asked. Then we'll give them a demonstration they won't forget, Wells replied. 2 hours later, Wells met privately with Emma Carter in a secure briefing room. Emma stood at attention as the Admiral entered, but Wells gestured for her to sit down. Relax, Carter, Wells said. I'm not here to punish you. I'm here to clean up the mess that your success created. Emma looked confused. My success? You accomplished your mission perfectly, Wells explained. You defended yourself against superior numbers, you prevented a diplomatic incident from escalating, and you maintained your cover as long as possible. The problem is that your cover was blown by circumstances beyond your control. What happens now? Wells pulled out a data pad and showed Emma a detailed briefing. Now you become the public face of humanity's enhanced military capabilities. Tomorrow you'll testify before the Alliance Council and demonstrate exactly what human soldiers can do. Emma read through the briefing materials, her expression growing more concerned with each page. Admiral, this plan reveals a lot of classified information about our training methods. Carefully selected information, Wells corrected. We're showing them enough to satisfy their curiosity, while hiding the most sensitive details. But Emma, I need you to understand something important. Wells leaned forward, her expression serious. After tomorrow's testimony, your life will never be the same. You'll be the most famous human in the Alliance and probably the most feared. Are you prepared for that responsibility? Emma was quiet for a long moment, considering the weight of what Wells was asking. Finally, she nodded. Yes, Admiral. I'm ready. The next day, the emergency tribunal convened in the Valiant's main auditorium. Representatives from all 12 Alliance species were present, either in person or via holographic projection. The room buzzed with tension as Emma Carter entered, flanked by Admiral Wells and Commander Brooks. Supreme Commander HFY called the session to order. This tribunal has been convened to investigate allegations that the human species has violated Alliance Charter provisions regarding military capability disclosure. Cadet Emma Carter, you stand accused of using prohibited combat enhancement techniques against fellow cadets. How do you respond? Emma stood up, her voice clear and steady. Supreme Commander, I used only the combat training provided to me by Earth's military education system. I violated no Alliance regulations. The Vorthak representative, a massive warrior named General Krextor, leaned forward aggressively. You claim that defeating 7 trained warriors in seconds is normal human capability? This is impossible. Admiral Wells rose to address the tribunal. General, with the Council's permission, I would like to provide some context about human military development. For the next hour, Wells presented carefully prepared information about humanity's approach to combat training. She explained that Earth had developed advanced techniques based on studying conflict throughout human history. But she was careful not to reveal the true scope of the TMI program. So you admit that humans have been concealing military capabilities? Asked the Haxari representative. We have been developing our capabilities since joining the Alliance, Wells replied diplomatically. All species continue to advance their military technologies. The difference is that humans focus on individual soldier enhancement, rather than just equipment advancement. The Kalani representative, a gentle creature named Council Singer Miraka, asked the question that everyone was thinking. Admiral Wells, how many humans possess capabilities similar to Cadet Carter's? This was the moment Wells had been preparing for. Council Singer, Earth currently trains approximately 2% of our military personnel using advanced combat techniques. These soldiers serve throughout our forces, including some who are assigned to Alliance vessels. The auditorium erupted in concerned voices. Representatives began speaking rapidly in their native languages, while universal translators struggled to keep up with the overlapping conversations. Supreme Commander HFY called for order. Admiral, are you telling this council that there are other humans with enhanced combat abilities serving in the Alliance fleet? Yes, Wells replied simply. But they serve with honor and have never used their abilities except in defense of Alliance interests. General Krextor slammed his clawed hand on the table. This is a betrayal of trust. Earth has planted super soldiers throughout our forces without telling us. General, Wells responded calmly. Every species has soldiers with specialized training serving in the Alliance. The Vorthak have combat specialists, the Haxari have strategic analysts, and the Zenthari have telepathic communications officers. Humans have individuals trained in advanced combat techniques. The tribunal continued for several more hours, with each species representative asking detailed questions about human capabilities and intentions. Emma demonstrated some basic combat forms, carefully selected to show skill without revealing the full extent of her training. Finally, Supreme Commander HFY called for a recess so the council could deliberate. As the alien representatives filed out of the auditorium, Admiral Wells turned to Emma. How do you think it went? Emma asked. Better than I expected, Wells replied. But now comes the hard part. The